Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. 3. Explicit rejection of neutrality and the hidden curriculum. Social Reconstructionists argue that the idea of a neutral school is a myth. Every school teaches values. A traditional school that never discusses racism, for example, is teaching a value, that racism is not a problem worth discussing. A school that rewards quiet individual competition is teaching the values of individualism and compliance, which support a competitive capitalist system. This hidden curriculum, the unspoken rules, structures, and messages, is, to a Reconstructionist, just as powerful as the formal, written curriculum. They're the first to point out how practices like tracking, placing students in high or low groups, often just reproduce and legitimize the existing class and racial hierarchies. Since neutrality is impossible, Reconstructionists argue that schools must be consciously biased in favor of democracy, justice, and humanity. The teacher's job is not to be a neutral referee who presents both sides of, say, racism or poverty, but to be a facilitator who is openly on the side of building a more just and democratic world. This is not about a partisan, Democrat versus Republican agenda, but a moral one. 4. Democracy as a lived daily practice, not just a subject. For Reconstructionists, democracy is not something you just read about in a civics textbook. It is the lifeblood of the classroom. A Reconstructionist classroom is a democratic community. Students and teachers often make decisions together about what to study, what rules to have, and how to assess their work. This is where they build directly on John Dewey's ideas, but they take it a step further. The democracy isn't just inside the classroom, it's connected to the world outside. The goal of a project on local pollution isn't just to learn about pollution and write a report. The goal is to do something about it. Students would be expected to research the problem, develop a solution, and then take action, presenting their findings to the city council, organizing a community cleanup day, or writing to their representatives. This is called service learning or community action. The idea is to give students real skin in the game. 5. The teacher as a transformative intellectual. In this model, the teacher's role changes completely. The teacher is not a sage on the stage, the all-knowing lecturer, or even just a guide on the side, the gentle facilitator. Later critical pedagogues, who are the heirs to Reconstructionism, would use a term like transformative intellectual. The Reconstructionist teacher is a researcher, a community builder, a question poser, and an activist. They must be deeply knowledgeable about the world, not just their subject. They must be brave, willing to tackle controversy, and skilled at managing difficult conversations. They must also be humble, willing to learn alongside their students and to have their own assumptions challenged. Their primary job is to help students develop critical consciousness, the ability to see, analyze, and question the power structures that shape their lives. While the classical Reconstructionism of Counts and Bramald faded somewhat into conformist, anti-communist pressure of the 1950s, its spirit never died. It was reborn in an even more potent form in the 1970s and 80s under the banner of critical pedagogy. The most important figure here is the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire. In his masterpiece, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Freire, who was working with poor, illiterate adult farmers, developed a powerful critique of traditional education. He called it the banking concept of education. In this model, the teacher is the expert who deposits knowledge into the empty bank of the student's head. The student's job is just to memorize and withdraw the deposit on test day. Freire argued this was an act of dehumanization and control. It teaches people to be passive and to accept the world as it is given to them by their oppressors. In its place, he championed problem-posing education. This is pure Reconstructionism. The teacher and students are co-learners who together analyze the world and their place in it. The curriculum is their reality. His famous method involved using pictures of the farmers' own lives to generate keywords like favela or slum, which they would then learn to read. But reading the word was inseparable from analyzing the political and social reality of the word. In the United States, thinkers like Henry Giroux and bell hooks brought Freire's ideas into conversation with American issues of class, race, and gender. Today, every time you hear about social justice education, culturally responsive teaching, anti-racist pedagogy, or critical race theory in schools, you're hearing the echo of social reconstructionism. These are all modern-day expressions of the core belief that education must be an active force for dismantling injustice and building a better world. If this philosophy sounds so powerful, why isn't every school in America a hotbed of social reconstruction? The answer is that Reconstructionism faces massive, and in some cases, valid, criticism and practical barriers. 1. The charge of indoctrination. This is, by far, the biggest and most powerful criticism. Who gets to decide what a better society looks like? If a teacher is consciously biased toward justice, isn't that just a fancy word for indoctrination? What is the teacher's vision of a just future is a socialist one, or a fundamentalist religious one? Aren't they just using a captive audience of children to push their personal political agenda? This is the charge that destroyed Harold Rugg. In the late 1930s and early 1940s, a coordinated, well-funded campaign was launched against his Man and His Changing Society textbooks. Groups like the American Legion and the Advertising Federation of America accused him of being a communist and anti-American. They claimed his books, which merely asked students to question the fairness of capitalism, were subversive. School boards, under intense pressure from loud, organized community groups, panicked. In a matter of years, Rugg's books were pulled from shelves and, in some cases, publicly burned. This story is a perfect case study. The culture wars are not new. Any attempt to have schools critically examine the status quo will be met with fierce resistance from those who benefit from that status quo. For critics, the school's job is to teach patriotism and basic skills, not to turn their children into social activists. 2. Practicality, standards, and the basics. The second major criticism is one of practicality. The American school system is a massive bureaucracy. It is not built for nimble, community-based, controversial problem-solving. It is built for efficiency, standardization, and accountability. In the era of No Child Left Behind and high-stakes standardized testing, the entire system is geared toward measurable, simplistic outcomes in reading and math. A teacher who wants to spend 6 weeks on a deep-dive project about water quality in their community is under immense pressure. Where does that fit in the pacing guide? How will it look on the multiple-choice state test? This leads to the back-to-basics argument. Critics argue that in their rush to save the world, Reconstructionist classrooms fail to teach students basic, foundational knowledge. If you're always debating social problems, when do you learn the multiplication tables, the rules of grammar, or the key dates in history? This is a powerful, common-sense argument that resonates with many parents. A Reconstructionist would, of course, fire back. They would say that students learn the basics better when they are applied to real, meaningful problems. You learn grammar because you need to write a persuasive letter to the mayor. You learn multiplication because you are calculating the economic impact of a new factory. In their view, the basics are a tool, not the goal itself. But this is a hard case to make when test scores are on the front page of the paper. 3. Teacher training and disposition. Another real-world hurdle is the teacher. The kind of teacher social reconstructionism demands is a superhero. They must be an expert in their field, a skilled psychologist, a brave activist, a master of Socratic dialogue, and a beloved community leader. This is a very, very tall order. Most teachers are overworked, underpaid, and just trying to get through the day. They may not have the training, the time, the energy, or frankly, the desire to take on the culture wars in their own classroom. It is far easier and safer to teach the textbook, give the quiz, and stay neutral. Social Reconstructionism is, in the end, a profound challenge. It is the conscience of the education world. It is the voice that, in the middle of a faculty meeting about test scores, pipes up to ask, "But what are we doing about the fact that half our kids are in poverty?" It is not an easy philosophy to live by. It is difficult to practice and it is risky. But its central questions refuse to go away because the crises that gave it birth have not gone away. We are not in the Great Depression, but we live in a world of staggering inequality. We are not facing the newness of the atomic bomb, but we are facing the existential threat of climate change. We are still, and always, grappling with the deep, painful realities of racism, sexism, and injustice. Social Reconstructionism's ultimate legacy is its moral clarity. It argues that education cannot be, and has never been, a neutral act. The choice to teach a neutral curriculum of just the facts is itself a profound political choice. It is a choice to support the world as it is, to implicitly teach students that the problems of the world are not theirs to solve. Social Reconstructionism offers the opposite. It offers a vision of education that is messy, difficult, democratic, and fundamentally hopeful. It dares to believe that teachers and students working together can, in fact, bend the arc of the moral universe. It dares to believe that the classroom can be the place where a new and better world is born.